the ability to produce on a large scale and things that are very, very intricate, like, pseudoephedrine, fentanyl, and these things don't come into our borders from really anywhere but Mexico. So Mexico is kind of the gatekeeper. And then to them, or to Mexico, is life's really expendable. It's a corrupt country, ran by drug lords, and when you're sending over people who are being paid pennies on the dollar for the amount or the net worth of the street drug that they're moving, it makes it real profitable for them. So, but it's just kind of China's just feeding us by proxy through Mexico. So.
Yeah. So another episode, whatever number this is, of the Everyday Patriot podcast. We got Tim joining us. So Tim, give us a little bit about your background, about, your, like, what you did in the past. You're part of the military. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So yes, John, hi everybody at the Everyday Patriot. My name is Tim. I'm a 7-year veteran of the United States Air Force. Got out as a non-commissioned officer. Got to see a lot of different things, and my experience in the military was eye-opening, to say the least. I got to see a lot of things politically, how the DoD functions under different political agendas, and just a ton of different stuff. I'm enlisted here in the beautiful state of California, San Diego specifically. Went to Tucson, Arizona, to Davis-Monthan Air Base, and spent quite a lot of time there, and then got out and came right back.
Nice. So you're from San Diego?
I am. So I've actually moved around a lot. San Diego, which is a major naval station, and then Norfolk, Virginia, which is also another huge major naval station. So nice. The parents aren't Navy. I don't know why those happen to be the two major places, but then, that's
well, there you go.
That's my story, John.
There you go. So you said you got to see a lot of basically how everything is ran, right?
It is, and it is very surprising.
Yeah,
across three basically different presidents too.
100. Well, so I would say it would be more so along the end of one presidency, the entirety of another presidency, and just getting into the beginning of a third presidency. Mm-hmm. Things take a little bit of time to change, but yeah. So there's definitely. I can give you the military, or at least my branch of the military, which I would say goes for most of the DoD's opinions on certain presidents and other presidents. Might be a little spicy to say, but the Air Force or I wouldn't say my opinion personally, but from a lot of the other people that I worked with, is the Obama administration's drawdown of the military put a lot of stress on the world of pretty much everything. They cut our manning, expect us to deliver on the same scale, and it made everybody's job a million times harder.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of it. That's kind of how it is in most businesses.
We see it in the business world for sure.
Yeah. You cut down on labor, you cut down on expenses, but then everybody's expected to perform at a higher level.
Exactly.
And that just, there's only a certain amount of time that can run for.
100%. So
what? I guess what was the major change that you did see? Because if everything took time, you might not have seen anything change from the previous administration to the current administration. Mm-hmm. But the previous, like what were some of the major changes that you saw?
So when it came down to the Obama, I came in towards the end of the Obama administration. There was a huge drawback, and then moving into the Trump administration, there was kind of like this reinvigoration. Money started being poured back into the DoD. Our pay went up exponentially. So every year we're given I think it's like a 1.5% to 3% raise over time, and he made sure that was delivered on. The year before I got in, I believe it was 2012 or 2013, there was a huge problem with the government shutdown, and the military actually had a lot of the troops had to go in and find ways, and rely on the public to feed them. That didn't happen under the Trump administration. That whole government shutdown, he made sure that the federal government was taken care of and that us as military personnel were taken care of. So I'm not going to say the Trump administration isn't without a significant amount of fault, but the one thing that they really did right is they took care of the federal government, and yeah, I guess that's one thing I can appreciate too.
Okay, all right. Well, now we're kind of started talking about this a little bit before, but we're now in the middle of this with the new administration. We're in the middle of this almost. Different countries are starting to find, alliances within themselves that we as the United States government and military don't typically, they're not our allies.
So what you're seeing is us being deplatformed as a major world power, and 100% it's happening.
Yeah.
We are being slowly moved out of major world powers. So, it is, I can't remember, I believe it's the UN, and we have what's called the Security Council. And the Security Council consists of, currently right now, United States, China, and Russia, major world powers. Basically everybody who's got the power to enforce really anything. And we're there at the moment, but how long we're going to stay there?
So what plays into that, right? What plays into that? How are we, if we're being deplatformed as one of the major, world powers, obviously that takes time to be deplatformed, but what is going into that? What can we see today, right now, that is happening in, like, the different changes that we're seeing? What are those changes? How can we know that that's taking place right now?
I feel like it's a respect thing, because you can probably talk about this too, is one thing we saw recently is we pulled out of Afghanistan, and there were a lot of people who didn't necessarily want to be there once our military was removed, from all different countries. And I know the UK was a big country that kind of looked down on the way we did things, because we didn't provide a security blanket for their citizens. So it's almost like a slap in the face of someone we would consider a major ally in the world market.
Yeah, definitely. And there's things along the line of like Germany and Japan. So I think it was a year or two ago, North Korea had actually sent missiles over into the airspace of Japan. Mm-hmm. We didn't respond.
I remember that.
Yeah. We didn't respond. What that tells all the other countries is that, hey, we're not going to protect our allies. So what we have done, what the United States has done is, post World War II, we told them, hey, you're not going to have a military, but we will protect you. We're going to put, I would say, there's one Marine Corps station there. There's two joint Army and Air Force stations there, and there's a naval station there as well. So we are supposed to be the ones who are there protecting them. We're not responding. You have other things. You have Russia, and I mean they're getting bold, pressing our airspace and our naval space. They'll, come in. They're constantly doing flybys and getting as close as they possibly they can to Alaska, which is kind of contested airspace because there's like a
path through kind of thing.
Yeah. So Russia and Alaska are pretty close, like geographically. So they'll press that airspace.
They're kind of like punking us.
They are. They're saying, "What the hell are you going to do about it? Are you going to make a move? And what are we doing?"
Yeah. So now, obviously, you're not currently in the military, active duty. So I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but do you know if there is a plan in place if something happens? Do you think we're going to step up? Do you think we're going to man up and say, like, no, this is our territory? Respect your space, or is it going to be a slow takeover?
So I wouldn't say I'd be lying to you to tell you that I was up that high to know something so intricate. However, from what I've seen, is there's always backup, there's always contingency plans. Now, how they're executed is highly political. So, if you have the Biden administration who, left a copious amount of troops and made tons of promises and aren't delivering on just how we're pulling out of the Middle East, we just kind of pulled right out and said, fuck everybody else. The politics move into that. The politics will decide how we're going to respond. There are plans in place, but how they're executed is completely depends on the administration that's in place.
So now we talk about, pre-election and all this. We have all of these, rumors that, one administration is, in alliance with Russia, and, you've got all these, rumors, and that administration is trying to, obviously protect itself, and everybody's going back and forth like, oh, you're with Russia or you're with Russia and all this. Well, now there's been confirmed evidence that the current administration was in alliance with China. And it just seems as though every day that passes, there's not only more evidence, but things are getting deeper and deeper into how China is trying to take over through Mexico.
They're taking over the entire world. So not only are China is so deeply ingrained into the rest of the world. They're in Africa right now. They're building entire cities, and they're completely Chinese.
The ghost cities?
No.
Do you know about those?
There are ghost cities in China, but they're actual. So essentially, what a country does when they come into a world superpower, they need to find a way to have cheap labor as well. So they moved all that cheap labor to Africa. So what they'll do is they built the infrastructure. They've built factories, and then the human labor factor that is cheap, they'll pay them even less than what they would pay their own people. So they moved it out there. They're coming up in a world power. Not only that, is China is coming down and they're attacking us, but the only way to attack a country, especially another world superpower, is give them everything that they need to destroy themselves. What's coming up through China right now, or by proxy through China from Mexico, is fentanyl and pseudoephedrine. For those who don't know, pseudoephedrine is the main compound for the street drug methamphetamine, and methamphetamine is the highest delivering in dopamine units. There's no other street drug. There's sex, food, nothing. There are many people out there who would much rather smoke more meth than live another fucking day. So
that's and we saw we can go down a rabbit hole here if you want to, but back a couple, what was it, the 70s, in New York with all the drug scene, and now we're talking about fentanyl coming up. I know we've talked about it before. That is such a dangerous drug.
It is.
Not even if you don't have any affiliation with it, like you're not trying to use it, if it's there, it's so potent.
The police officer got killed, or almost got killed. He OD'd in San Diego.
Yeah.
By just touching the bag.
So the fentanyl is such a strong compound. So it would take less than what you would season a single French fry with. Like if you wanted to throw a little bit of salt on a French fry, it would take less than the average person would probably put on that to kill a human being. It's a very, very dangerous compound. It is used in the hospital setting, but under highly, highly controlled. Like these compounds are watched. They're when and where they're being used, how much is being used is constantly being monitored. And then when you have
it's diluted. It's so potent that it's supposed to be.
It is high. So the actual medical grade use of fentanyl is highly watched and is diluted, and there are so many safe practices that go into it. But even still, it's a dangerous chemical.
Yeah.
So when you have, these.
But it's cheap, right?
Oh yeah, it's very cheap, and a synthetic opiate is what it is. So it's super easy to make. Instead of having to grow these fields of poppy and extract the juices from it, boil it down, and do whatever you got to do with it. These synthetic opiates were created so they're super easy, super efficient to manufacture. Whenever you have a synthetic means of making something, it has made production of it that much easier and that much more profitable. What China's doing is they're sending all these synthetic opiates right up through Mexico. There's not a whole lot of regulation that goes into it. These synthetic opiates hit, they might have a little bit of black tar heroin, they cut it with fentanyl. These guys aren't chemists. A lot of these guys don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't know what they're doing at all.
But they can make more money.
Oh, they'll make tons of money if you it's
higher profit margin. Yeah.
If you got something that hits really hard and you get people addicted. Now, that one guy who has just a sprinkle too much and, kills 1,000 people because his distribution line gets all the way down to the end and people start dying. There's no, what are you going to, you can't go anywhere and say, hey, can you test my heroin before I use it?
Yeah.
You roll the fucking dice every time you stick that needle.
But you even said it. There's more people that are willing to just chase that high rather than care about
the next breath they fucking take.
Exactly.
Well, it's in everything too. It's in pills that look like prescription pills. They'll put it in. They'll put it in cocaine. They'll put it in everything that they can make cheaper but sell at the same price or more expensive. Yeah.
It's all about the drug market, right? And we talk about it every day. It's your bottom line. How much are you spending versus how much are you making? Can you continue to live a certain lifestyle, from all of these, the distributors, let's call them. But now let's kind of dig a little deeper. So, China's sending all of this fentanyl up through Mexico. What's
in it for them?
What's in it for them? Like, why would they do that?
So we're slowly destroying they're allowing us to destroy ourselves over time, right? So, have you ever heard the saying, I think it's Rome wasn't conquered in a day, right? So things take time. But, if you slowly destroy a generation, and I'm going to be, I'm gonna sound like an old man saying myself, but you've got things like TikTok, social media platforms that are Chinese controlled. What they're pointing us to do is they're saying, hey, focus on yourself, focus on on the different genders that are out there, all the inequalities, focus on that.
Even just younger kids being like we talked about it yesterday, like sexualization, and it's just crazy.
It's just almost like what can you focus on that's not important, but you can get an entire generation to change their beliefs and to change the way they look at the world and to change the way they look at politics and to change everything.
Focus on something that's trivial, meaningless, and that is someday...
Or self-serving, almost.
Exactly. Yeah. Self-serving. Things that aren't going to matter. Yeah.
Right.
So if we can take the focal point off of things that you actually can change and then put it on something that you possibly could change but isn't going to fucking matter. It doesn't do anything but to better your life or anybody else's. But, it's kind of that quick fix. It's that quick high of like, I'm fighting for something. Because every generation wants to fight for something, right? When you're coming up in your teenage years, everybody's like, I want to be a part of something. I want to be a part of changing something. That's part of how the human psyche develops. You want to...
You want to matter.
You want to matter, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you don't... If you as a young person feel like you're moving through, you're going through all the steps that everybody else feel like you don't matter.
Yeah.
So instead of focusing on things that you can change, you focus on things that we're being focused on things that don't matter. And for the people that just don't give a shit about that at all, we're going to feed you drugs. We're going to feed you, in the remote parts of, Indiana, places where there's nothing to do, but we're going to feed you some meth, we're going to feed you, some fentanyl, we're going to get you hooked and addicted to drugs until eventually, things start to fall apart. We have musicians in all genres endorsing, drug use, and I've never really listened to them, but there's an artist named Little Peep, right?
This is the first time hearing about it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so he's really
Okay.
he's an artist, right? And it ties into. So I was stationed in Tucson, Arizona. All the songs are dealing with drugs and the uses of drugs and various other things. But this young man in 2016 died in Tucson, Arizona. He thought he had gotten he had thought he had bought a prescription. I think it was Xanax, which is a benzodiazepine. It's got medical uses as well. He actually got a pill that was packed full of fentanyl and died in Tucson, Arizona.
Yeah.
So it's that repetitious story. It's, me as an artist, I'm making music, telling you to consume drugs. And for a time it's fun. Maybe you smoke a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's not a problem until
it is.
Until you're addicted or you're fucking dead.
Even some of their names, I think one I do know is like Lil Xan or something, and it's Lil Xanax. It's his name. It's literally his name.
Yeah, that's just and I look at it in a kind of a different light, right? So I have 2 kids. One of them is not of age to really pay attention to anything yet that is social media related, and one, she is looking at things like TikTok, and she's looking at things, it's all about, like and subscribe, watch my YouTube and follow my TikTok and all of this. And that is seemingly innocent. But then you have all of these, call them ties or, tentacles or whatever that go down this rabbit hole for, these dances.
The algorithm.
Yep. Yeah. And it starts you start to be desensitized to certain things from a very young age, and
I would even say that, I would even argue to say that has started slowly over time also with our generation too. So I remember being 13, 14 years old and, things on like, I don't know if you guys remember like MTV and like,
oh yeah,
how some of, some things you stood up late enough at night and you'd be like, but it wasn't porn. So, you were sitting there and you saw some things and you're like, this is, and then slowly became more desensitized until you're just like,
right. It's so crazy. Like I'll run into people that I went to high school with, and, that's something that actually comes up a lot of times is, you think back to when you were a kid, and man, when I was 10, 11, 12 years old, MTV, you weren't allowed to watch, Parents were like, I don't know what that is. There's some like inappropriate stuff on this music video, and that was not that long ago. And now you've got this generation that is like, in bathing suits dancing on TikTok or worse.
WAP, yeah. Have you seen it? And no one's like, some of that shit. You've heard the song WAP, right?
Oh yeah.
You've seen the music video to WAP.
I haven't. I have no desire to, but that alone, just the idea of that song is just it's insanity to me.
It's scary. I feel like at 10, I was busy. I was playing sports like every day, and kids nowadays barely play sports. I realistically don't think I was like really thinking about girls until like teens.
I wasn't. The only time I was watching TV was like Saturday morning cartoons, and that was if I didn't have a sports game.
That was special.
Yeah. And those were like cartoons that, you look at now and you even wonder how they got on the air. Like there's nothing to it. It's just like sometimes it's not there's no even dialogue. It's just like little cartoon characters running back and forth and like blowing them up.
And you guys remember Ren and Stimpy?
Yeah. Like Ren and Stimpy.
They've gotten in trouble for some serious, but at the time your parents were like, "Oh, cartoons, how bad could it be?" And then you really look at, you go back.
That's how it starts.
Go back today, watch Ren and Stimpy.
Oh yeah.
Like, what in the fuck was I watching?
Yeah. Well, not only that, but then you've got movies like Disney movies. You've got like all of these things that, you're watching and you're like, this is like the coolest movie ever. I watch it now as a parent and I'm like, holy shit, what is going on?
You shouldn't be 10, 11 years old thinking about relationships and shit like this. Life should just be the simple, just a time to live and fucking grow, but they punch it into your psyche so young. It's like, you're nothing without a relationship, you're nothing without this, and you're fucking 10 years old.
You're building your identity, but your identity should be built naturally, not based on you got to wear makeup when you're 9 years old.
Right.
You gotta,
Oh man, like,
the developmental years.
My oldest, right, she'll watch this show. I mean, she watches a bunch of shows that all over here, and I'll be watching, and and it's not terrible, but I'll be like, that's we're gonna not watch this show, and we're not gonna not watch that show, and it's it's basically a lot of it is talking back to your parents, having a certain attitude, wearing makeup, if they talk about their first kiss when they were 8, 9, 10 years, I'm like, what is going on in the world today?
It's
just desensitizing.
Sad. Well, it's sad because you're not able to grow up naturally.
Innocent.
You can't enjoy your life. Everything has to be
controlled.
Yeah, it's just it's sad, and it's only getting worse though, because it's getting worse and worse every day. Where I remember my parents, and even my grandparents talking about when they were kids, and they're like, yeah, what I was doing? I was playing softball. I was roller skating, and it sounds like such a beautiful time. You're not worried about anything, and then things just happen to have cascaded into something else. You went to high school, maybe found your first kiss, your first love, and then things just kind of evolved instead of like, they're in a relationship.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? I must
Right.
be worth nothing because my friends over there are doing something and I'm not doing it.
Yeah, so let's kind of take that and let's circle back to how that affects our country,
Society,
basically,
yeah.
in society, and what other countries are doing in order to not focus on that. I mean, and this is a little bit silly to say, I think, but you would know more about this than I think anybody. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's another country that has a military that's worried about gender equality.
Not at all. Nope.
So
they don't. So of world powers, no. Russia. The thing about these dictator states and they say there's not all this political bullshit. It's like you don't like it, too fucking bad. China, they control their people to an extent where I'm not saying their government is good by any means, because what China is doing is they've actually they've killed the birth rate of their country. They've controlled it so far that they've gone down a hole where they actually can't recover. So they have more people dying than being birthed in their country. So they've created their own fucking problem, but they've also controlled their people enough to the point where you're more worried about your next fucking meal, or you're more worried about getting an adequate wage just to live.
So we're talking about two different extreme ends of the spectrum.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So we're liberal. We're as a country, in the grand scheme of countries, we're super fucking liberal.
Yeah.
We're liberal as fuck. If we're sitting here worried about because at one point the military was paying for your gender fucking reassignment surgery. That was a fucking thing under the Obama administration. If you got in and you're like, I want to have the gender reassignment surgery, they would fucking pay for you. What a giant waste of fucking money. Like, if we're supposed to be a lethal fighting force, it comes down to being able to be deployable. And if you're not deployable because you had your genitals reassigned, how are you gonna be a lethal fighting force? How are you gonna be in it? You can't.
Yeah.
You just can't.
And that's nothing against men or women. Like,
Not at all.
I know some pretty badass women that would, destroy a man in any kind of a fight.
100%. But believe me, like there's kick-ass women. I'm actually a special operations fail-out, right? Got reassigned to I worked at aircraft, so that's where they sent me. That's my general area. But I know some badass women, some girls that would kick my fucking ass and made it through that pipeline. I've got a huge amount of respect for it. But if you're sitting there, it's the downtime, it's the year that it takes to recuperate from major surgeries, is you're undeployable, so you're not a lethal fighting weapon. There's Marines, there's young women, young men. They're all kick-ass motherfuckers who are out there doing what they gotta do, actually fighting. But if you're worried about, how you feel, how your gender is making you feel, and you need to get that reassignment surgery done, you can't fight.
Right. Yeah. So and then that, I mean, that's just a very surface level issue right off the bat.
100.
Right. But then that digs. You go down that whole rabbit hole of like, oh, you know, are we accepting enough women into the military? Are we accepting enough? You know, is it even? Is it, you know? And I mean, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the last place that you should ever have to worry about that. It should be, hey, can we destroy the enemy if there is a threat? Period.
100%. Now, the military very much is a male-driven or a male-saturated career field, but I don't think there's no exclusionary processes there. The military is like, come one, come all. Like, if you want to come and hang out with us, you know, come do a job. Right now, the military in general, we're all about inclusion. Like, they want everybody in there, you know. It's a giant meat grinder, and anybody who wants to be part of that meat grinder, come on. But if you are worried about a bunch of small bullshit, you really aren't. You can't be lethal. If you're worried about, you know, what is happening and what should stop is that we're actually changing standards. The military is people are trying to get the DoD to change standards for certain things. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but there's the Marine Corps and the Army both tried to have female infantry units, right? What they found is that, you know, for me, what I understand is the female is actually the psychologically superior being, right? They think they have a higher thought process than us, which on the battlefield isn't necessarily a great thing. So on the battlefield, us as men, we're better at taking orders, kicking ass, taking names, doing what we're told to do. So they tried it out. The Marine Corps backed off and said, you know, we're not going to have female infantry units. We can't do it. We find that women will ask more questions when we need results. So the Army's still trying to do it, but haven't moved forward with it.
So that almost seems like a thing where it's like, hey, what job are you best suited for?
Exactly.
Right? So, you know, maybe, and we talked about this just last week, you know, like if there is somebody that can do my job better than me, male, female, unspecified, I don't fucking care. If they can do the job better than me, then they probably should be in the position, right? And so you look at, even from a military standpoint, if there's somebody that can give orders, can maybe think about things on the back end and think about, you know, like more of a chessboard, right? If I do this, what's the next outcome? If I do it this way, what is going to happen? Maybe that's the position they should be in.
100%.
And not necessarily worried about, oh, well, we need, you know, to be more diverse, so we should have a female infantry unit just so that we can check the box and say more diversity.
Yeah, and it makes no fucking sense to do it that way.
Yeah.
It's, you know, we're chasing our tail.
Yeah. And then so let's, you know, kind of piggybacking off that, right? If we're chasing our tail there, in the grand scheme of things, why would we do that? Why would anybody in their right mind, right? Forget administrations, forget size, left, right, whatever. Forget about all of that. Why would anybody think that is
I think it's
the
just
way to go?
Optics.
So you're saying, so actually I know you're saying forget, you know, administrations, but that's the only thing it boils down to. It's how can I get you to vote for
Votes.
me?
Yep.
If I want you to vote for me, you know, we can really look at the issues that we have, which there aren't very many, and you know, it's not very diversifying. Or I can fabricate something. You know, oh, there's this giant issue over here, and I've got the way to fix it. So let's fabricate
a problem.
Yeah, let's fabricate a problem and then sell the solution.
Kind of seems like what we've been going through for the last 2 years.
So I'm an Apple fan, right? But you know, there's this ongoing joke is that's what Apple does, is that they'll fabricate a problem and sell you the solution, right? So you know I've got an older iPhone, but on the newer ones, or you got the face one, some people love the little fingerprint scan, right? So they're like, oh, you know what? For an extra $100, we'll sell you the little thing that snips in the bottom, and then you can scan your fingerprint, right? So that's what administrations are doing. We don't have very many problems, so let's fabricate a problem. Let's make gender a huge issue, and let's sell that point.
So let's if we're there, right, we're selling the point that there's a gender issue, right, just from a government standpoint. What does that do to the country over time?
Oh, it tears us apart. It's me and you versus them instead of us as a whole.
Right.
So if we're fighting amongst ourselves, we're not looking at other countries and being like, what the hell are you doing over there? Look at all the injustices that are happening there, instead of us coming together and fighting against a greater evil, we're fighting against ourselves.
Which is only going to tear us apart from the inside.
Yeah, almost like you were saying, we're distracted because and in the meantime, these other countries could be getting a leg up on us without us even knowing.
Oh, they are. They're not waiting. They're not taking time. They are 100%. They're getting a leg up on us.
So do you think that from an outside perspective, there's somebody, call it China, Russia, somebody that is basically infiltrating, right, and saying like, hey, you guys have a gender issue, you should fix it, while we're over here making sure that we're ready to go if and when the time arises?
So I think the smaller, like, fabricated issues are actually coming from within,
like George Soros.
They're actually coming from within. However, they're being reinforced by other political powers. So there's no denying that partly the Obama and the Biden administration both have ties to China. Now, if they can, China, if you don't already know, owns TikTok, right?
Yes.
So if their algorithm is pumping up, hey, look at all this, look at this. Division in race and division in gender and division in all these other political things, and they bump up that algorithm, what are you going to see on TikTok?
Right.
There. It's right there. It's right in front of your face. And you might not be looking for it, but it's still there, and it's just boom.
Even to bring it full circle, if we're talking algorithms, people want to say, hey, don't get too conspiratorial. There's no meddling in our elections. It's all secure. But here's the thing. An election comes up. There's algorithms. They might be pushing certain videos towards certain people.
Well, that's Facebook was caught doing that, right? They were caught taking one side down and promoting another side. And,
it's misinformation.
It is misinformation. So we'll probably be censored for that. Yeah. But on the flip side, like you even said it, like there are ties.
People don't even realize that what they're seeing has been filtered through a lens. They don't understand that. They're just like, I love these videos. They just keep going.
Yeah.
This scroll never stops.
Yeah.
It never stops.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that this has been perfectly curated for them for a specific reason. It might be innocent, as in just they want you to spend more time on their app. It might be financial, like they want you to purchase something, an ad pops up, you buy it, they know to do more of that. Or it might be even more malicious to the point where they're pushing a certain agenda, and then, I would consider that meddling. I would
lean more on the malicious side. That there's, we're living in probably one of the darkest times. There's so much going on, but it's so well curated and it's so well planned out. We don't even know what's happening until you really start looking into things, how large these.
And then it's going to be too late.
Oh yeah, no. Like I said before, is China's expanding it at an exponential rate, but you don't hear about it. You don't hear about them moving into these other countries that we don't have alliances with, building them up. They're moving on us. China's moving on us, and I'm sure if Russia's trying to as well, that they don't have their stuff quite as well planned out. But China's a well-oiled machine, and they're coming.
They have a strong hold because they, unlike the U.S., where we just, I guess you could say, like, air our dirty laundry, and that's pushed by other countries too. People don't even know there's concentration camps in China, and they just keep that under wraps, where this could be a UN, like, national issue, but they just have people in camps,
It's, and yeah, we can go down.
But they have control, and they just stuff that away.
Yeah, we can go down a whole bunch of different rabbit holes here, but, there are obviously reports, but everything that's being said right now is that China is taking the 20, 30, 40 year run, and they're going to play it slow. They're going to play chess on checkers. And what they're doing is they're not coming out to say like, hey, we need a war today. It's, hey, we're going to take over in 50 years and this is how we're going to do it. And when you look at things from an outside perspective and you start to, we talk about this all the time in stocks, you just zoom out a little bit and then you look at things from more of a global perspective, you're like, holy shit. They are in every other country. We are looking at things that we shouldn't be worried about, and they're not. And, they're building themselves up to be this huge powerhouse. And we're arguing about what gender I am and what are my pronouns.
Yep.
Yeah.
And do you wanna know their playbook? Have you ever heard of Sun Tzu's The Art of War?
Yep.
Yeah.
Heard of it, right?
Yeah.
That is their playbook, and because I had read a few passages in there, kind of like, this might be a cool thing, but it basically says that fighting within a war, you all out open war doesn't really help anybody. It diminishes both sides and makes very few people, specifically arms manufacturers, very rich. But for the government, the people, it's not very profitable. Now, if I buy up a large majority of your country, cut you off at the knees, and make sure you can't fight because I own 75% of your assets, then
there's no battle.
There's no battle. I just own everything of yours, and then you're mine now, and then everything you own belongs to me.
Yeah, and then when you look at it from the grand perspective, you start to see things. Obviously, this is the age-old thing where everything that you buy is manufactured and made in China, right?
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
And so that's where all of our money is going, right? Everything that we have done has gone overseas. We can talk about the pipeline that was shut down at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. We can talk about Russia's pipeline was only extended, so it was that we're sending things away from our country so that we are now basically at the mercy of
every
other countries.
But and it's so twisted that they've made it so that if you say, hey, even just on a real general broad sense, hey, I think we should focus on ourselves, on our own country. Well, then you're extreme. You're I forget what the word is.
Well, even if you just like focus on your, from the very beginning, right? When we just wanted to focus on ourselves, and Trump wanted to close the borders, and now he's xenophobic, right. And he's,
that's what
it's just it goes, obviously there's many ways you can look at this, but it goes so much deeper too. You can just say that, from as silly as this sounds, if Trump is for keeping everything in America and Biden is for diversifying and, let's have different roles and genders and let's bring China in on these things. If you agree that everything should be kept in America, but Trump said you should, we've become so divided that we're just going to agree with whatever party because we don't want to be associated with the other party.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's I believe that there should definitely be some open communication with other countries, but it's undeniable that all the crime there's an insane amount of crime coming up to our southern border. And wanting to shut down the southern border, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's actually what's needed. I'm not saying shut out the rest of the world, but we have it's like an arm has been cut off and the bleeding is coming from down there, and there's no everybody's saying don't do anything, but a tourniquet needs to be put on. We need to stop that bleeding because our money's going down there for the drugs that are being exchanged, and we're getting nothing back but this parasitic infection coming back our way, killing young men and women. And when you start killing and controlling that generation, that's where we're going to lose because they're the future of our country. So if an entire generation is addicted to sex, hard drugs, and worrying and they be turned into an entire generation of narcissists, what are we going to do where we have no future?
Now you talk about that 30, 40, 50 year plan. Now that's it again, you zoom out. Right? Yeah, you zoom out and then you're like, oh wow, look, I'm a very logical guy. I don't, my wife will get mad at me because I don't ever really it's hard for me to think with emotion because I just look at the facts, right? And I don't think about the emotional side behind it. But just looking at the facts, if you zoom out, I'm not going to say everybody is going to look at it this way, but it would be very hard to look at that and be like, well, you're wrong, because you have to almost sit back and say like, oh shit, okay. That's not good.
It's one thing to be like idealistic and be like, it'd be great to have no borders and everyone be, at a comfortable level. They can feed their family. They got good work, all this, but it's idealistic. You have to also be realistic to where we find ourselves. Like, we can't help every country because it's going to only hurt us.
Right.
And that's not being selfish. That's being
looking at the grand picture and being realistic. I mean, there's one thing that comes up with every election. It comes up with everything, right? And Obama tried to do it when it was universal health care, right? A lot of people don't realize that there are countries that have universal health care and they're terrible. Yeah. They're absolutely terrible. So, you even look at places like Canada,
they
right?
Come down here.
They come down here for health care. But what happens when you have free health care, right? What happens when the government owns the health care?
No incentive.
There's zero incentive. But what happens if you're in your 70s and you need a heart transplant and the government owns the health care? You're too old. You're not going to get it. Money's not going to matter because we own the health care. And now obviously there's so much more that goes behind this, but now they can say it's too expensive, you're too old, you've lived a good life, this is it.
Well,
so this is coming firsthand from somebody who's dealt and who's utilized government healthcare, federally owned healthcare in the military. That's what you get. Your first stop is a military medical facility. There's zero incentive to help you. There's no money in it. So why the fuck am I going to work any harder to get you treated now? We have doctors, physicians, assistants in there. I have a buddy who got out right. He was, they told him to fuck off every time he went in there for his back problem. He finally gets out and goes sees a civilian specialist, and they say, hey, bud, you have spinal stenosis, you have bulging disc, your back is fucked, and you qualify for 75% disability.
So we were chatting about, how your buddy goes to the VA, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he has spinal stenosis and, it's government healthcare.
Is the fucking worst healthcare. That government ran healthcare is the worst. So your first stop to any medical facility, you can go to the ER, right? But if they deem that ER visit unnecessary, right? You go there, you have an excruciating stomach ache, like you think you're maybe you think you're having a heart attack, something like that. You go there, they're like, you had food poisoning, and they don't deem it a good ER visit. It's coming out of your pocket. You're gonna pay us back for it. So anyway, my buddy sat there. He spent 4 years in the Air Force, served out his whole contract. 2 years into his contract, he was having really bad back problems, like excruciating. Like, this man went from he was a killer on his PT test, excellent shape, just a all-around badass physical specimen. And then he goes downhill. Last 2 years, doesn't want to work out, doesn't want to go out, loves to shoot, stopped shooting, just wanted to stay in his dorm room and really just play video games and not move around too much. He gets out, and right as he gets out, he talks to what's called our patient advocate and says, hey, I feel like I'm not being taken care of. Can I talk to a civilian specialist? They work that out. He goes to the doctor. They take x-rays. They do the MRIs. The civilian side, where there's incentive, said, hey, bud, you are really fucked up. He gets 70% or 75% disability from it, and he gets out. I see him the day before he's supposed to walk out, get his DD-214, and he's like, they finally fucking took care of me. And he's not talking about the military, but somebody in the medical community, being the civilian side, said, somebody finally fucking took care of me. I'm good. Like, I have a ton of back problems, and they're fixing it now. That's the shit they were looking at. So, coming firsthand, the military is very much like almost like a miniature communist, a little mini form of communism. Because you're told what you can do, what you can't do by the federal government. What your whole day is controlled.
How to dress, everything. When to wake up.
It's so crazy. So I used to work in the physical therapy field, and one of the things that we would joke around a lot about was the fact that, you know, the military health insurance, right? TRICARE, right? They took care of the spouses 1,000 times more than they took care of the actual active duty personnel.
Exactly.
So as a civilian contractor through our clinic, we were able to accept TRICARE, not for an active duty, but for the spouse of active duty. Now,
You want to know why?
I'm extremely interested from your point of view.
Because up until just a few months ago, if you signed that dotted line and you belonged to Uncle Sam, right, you couldn't sue him. So they accidentally cut off both your fucking legs. It was, oops, sorry, you can't do shit about it. We'll give you 100% disability, have a nice fucking life. You do that in the civilian world, that's a $2, $3, $4
million.
$billion lawsuit. Like, this is insanity. You're walking away and you're taking care for the rest of your life. In the military, you were not allowed to sue. So anything happens, sorry, bud, that's just the name of the game. But guess who could sue? The spouses. The spouses could be like, oh no, like, look what you've done to me. You're gonna pay for it, and they would have paid for it. But not the military members. You are property at that point. That's what you'd be.
That is so insane. So we would have, and you know, we go down and talk about different things all the time. And I'm not saying that I agree to this or disagree to this. My opinion doesn't matter here. It's just, you know, zoomed out logical perspective, right? You can have somebody like your buddy who has terrible back pain, can't move, is literally in the military trying to fight to defend our country. And he is not able to be seen by any kind of civilian doctor for anything, just to figure out what's wrong with him. And not to hate on, you know, chronic migraines, but there's only so much you can do with those, right? You can stretch, you can work out, but at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot that you can continue to work on day in and day out. And I only use this example because at our clinic, we had, gosh, I don't even know, 20, 30% TRICARE that were chronic headaches. And they got 5 visits a week, unlimited visits. It wasn't like a 12-week hard max or 12-visit hard max or anything. It was unlimited because it was military. But now their spouse that is active duty can't be seen.
Yep.
And, you know, and then we can go on for days about that and different examples, but that's just a prime example of why universal healthcare would just
Competition is good.
Will
the
not
the
work.
Free market. The
It's
free
good
market
for the
is
consumer.
good.
So yes, the free market is always, and 100% is always good for the consumer. Like, it's bad for the major businesses, bad for the producer, but the consumer, you want a free market because.
Yeah. There's still problems. Like, you can't really. It's very difficult. They pass like legislation and stuff to try and get like actual numbers on how much a procedure is going to cost, because a lot of times it'll be like hidden in the, you know, insurance plan or wherever. Like, you can't walk in and see a menu and be like, this is a knee replacement, this is a hip replacement, and you can't shop around, which would technically be like total free market, like consumerism. But it's not without its problems, but it definitely should benefit the consumer or the individual.
And it definitely wouldn't. And even things that come down to prescriptions.
Mm-hmm.
So the pharmaceutical companies right now have basically a monopoly. We've got 3 or 4 major players: Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and I think 1 or 2 others.
Moderna.
Yeah, Moderna.
No surprise there.
So there's
that stock shot up this year.
Yeah, they all did.
So there's major players, right? And, you know, like all of us right here, and we had something we wanted to sell, we could all, you know, instead of us fighting with each other, we could fight against the consumer. If we had something that is vitally necessary, you had the only supply of coffee in the CNT area, right? This is all we got. This is all that's available, and, you know, it's connected to your house somewhere or another. And we decided that instead of us fighting, we all got some connection to the coffee. Instead of us fighting, we'll all charge. You know, we'll take turns. You'll charge a little bit more this quarter, maybe me this quarter, you next quarter. But we'll all keep everything. We'll all keep our profit margin up at a certain point. We'll all keep it right there. So
Technically, that's monopoly. And
it is.
it's supposed to be illegal
And
under
it's
the
not.
under the law, but it's
Yeah.
not
It's
because
not.
they skirt the law.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Oh man.
awesome, that was a
we
solid episode.
went in depth on that. So yeah, if you guys have any questions or want us to talk about anything very specific, just give us a shout.
You know China's coming for you.